It is 4 o'clock in the morning and Nami is already working. She is like many of the women of her village. They have their usual household chores to do, but also have wage-earning jobs outside of the home. They must get an early start. We are here planning a training program with the women and men in Nami's village. And as we have learned, Nami has her tasks to do, her husband has his. And they work together to give their family the best life possible. That's the way life is in Asia. There is a division of responsibility between men and women that is very much a part of the culture. The way responsibility is divided can vary from country to country. In fact, it can vary from village to village, depending on traditions and depending on environmental, social, and economic circumstances. As forestry planners, we need to recognize that in every culture, men and women have different roles and different knowledge and concerns and priorities. If both men and women are included in planning forestry activities, there is a much better chance for success. How can we do that? Well, there is a tool called gender analysis. Let's take a look at one area in Thailand as an example of how important it is to know the specific roles of men and women. This is a very small geographic area, one almost denuded mountainside, yet look what we learned through gender analysis about the differences in 3 villages on that one slope. The Hmong tribe lives in the highlands. Here, gender roles are distinct and very separate. Women are considered their husband's property after marriage. Women handle household chores, men controlled land and credit. Hmongs rely heavily on forest products for food, fodder, and medicine. The people living in the uplands are the Thais. In this village, women and men work together on many agricultural and forestry tasks. Men help with the cooking and cleaning and have control over land, but both men and women sign for credit and have access to off-farm employment. In this lowland village, the land is illegally occupied by new settlers. Most household tasks are performed by women, but men collect fuel wood. These settlers are mainly interested in cultivating forest land and have little interest in tree planting and forest management because they live on land legally controlled by the government, and people feel unsure of long-term access. So on one mountainside in Thailand, we see how the relationships between men and women and the division of roles varies from village to village, and how crucial it is to have an understanding of gender issues before beginning any forestry activity. With the Hmong, extension meetings with men and women need to be held separately. Thai men and women can meet together. And with the lowland settlers, tenure has to be addressed before any training activities can be held. Any forestry planner in this area must be aware of 3 very distinct living patterns to make the activity successful. And the way to start would be with gender analysis. We mentioned earlier that Nami begins work at 4 in the morning. During the rainy season, she starts even earlier to finish her household tasks before dawn so that she can work with her husband in the fields. Her day is longer than his. She gets 6 hours sleep a night. He gets 8 or 9. By asking the right questions, we would know that during peak agricultural seasons, Nami has no extra time. So any forestry activity involving women, such as clearing plots or watering tree nurseries, would need to be scheduled during the off-season and should include the introduction of labor-saving methods. Now, let's look at a case where gender analysis helped get a project back on track, but would have been better if it had been used in the planning phase. A group of men was invited to a village meeting to help foresters plan a community forestry project. The men told the foresters that they wanted to plant hardwood tree species to make furniture and wood carvings for sale. 3,000 hardwood seedlings were provided, but they all died. Why? Because in that village, the women care for seedlings, and no one had told them that the seedlings were coming. So another meeting was held, and the women were included. The women said that because they collect fuelwood and fodder, they preferred fast-growing softwood species. So the project delivered seedlings of both types, satisfying both men and women. If gender analysis had been used as part of the planning, a lot of seedlings and time could have been saved. Planners would have known in advance the needs and activities of the men and the women just by involving them in the planning process and asking the right questions. There are countless ways gender analysis can and should play a part in forestry planning. In Sri Lanka, where Nami lives, men have greater access to training programs. So even though Nami has responsibility for processing food from the home garden, she probably would not have been included in a training session on processing methods. But because of the information we have from gender analysis, when we plan a training activity on how to harvest and process products from home gardens, we know that we should include both Nami and her husband so that they can both receive the training they need, training that enhances their ability to improve their lives. Until recently, it was presumed that an understanding of men's needs and priorities reflected the interests of all household members. But a lot of projects were failing. The idea began to grow that women's needs and priorities also had to be considered. But focusing on women only was not the answer either. Now we know the needs and priorities of men and women cannot be considered separately. For successful development, these gender roles must be looked at within the environmental, social, and economic situation of a particular area. That is the beginning of gender analysis.